Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle LeConte. Welcome back to another edition of VCTV. We're excited to have you on this Thursday's episode, which we have a double feature of, a lot to talk about, everything around money. We're talking about commerce. We're talking about fintech a little later today. But right now, we're going to talk about what's happening in the entire world of us as consumers and e-commerce, the new way we buy everything. Very few people are going in and out of stores. Instead, we're buying everything in bulk and everything online in ways we never have before. Nintendo Switches, as I teased yesterday and I teased earlier this week, are still sold out everywhere. People buying these things online. Apple laptops, you name it, whatever good and service it is, if you can find it online, people are buying it, from our very basic needs and necessities all the way up to our luxury goods, even including the food we eat every single day. Now, what impact does this have on the rest of our lives? How long will this last? Where are the opportunities as investors should we be paying attention to? As entrepreneurs, what should we be looking at? How should we be building? How should we be scaling? And how should we be readying ourselves for the future as this starts to take over as a norm for us around buying goods on the e-commerce side and not as much potentially on the brick and mortar side? But I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to let our speakers talk all about that today. First and foremost, before we get kicked off, as we do here on every episode, we'd like to thank you, our audience, for tuning in. Really appreciate you being here. If you like what you hear at any moment, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Feel free to reach out. Elena, the LA Token team, and myself would love to hear from you on how we can improve the show, and also if you would like to be on. As investors, if you'd like to share your thoughts like those today, we'd love to have you. Entrepreneurs, if you'd like to come on and join us like Andrew will do later today and pitch us as investors, we'd love to have you as well. Reach out. We're always open. DM, email, you name it, 24/7, 365. We are available for you. Also, a big shout out to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible and bringing it to you on any screen, any device, anywhere you may be in the world. Now, let's get started. We got a ton to talk about, great people to share with us, and a short amount of time. So let's rock and roll. First and foremost, as we kick off, as we do on every episode, Ben, welcome to the show. Welcome back. If you could, a little intro and a little background on yourself.
Sure. I'm Ben Narrison. I'm a venture partner at NEA, New Enterprise Associates. NEA is about a 42-year-old venture firm, one of the original Silicon Valley US firms. It's a global firm with 4 offices across the US, but we travel, or at least historically traveled quite a bit. About $27 billion in total capital under management, and currently running about a $3.7 billion fund. And prior to that, I was an entrepreneur for 25 years, back to the internet bubble when I took the company public, and then spent about 10 years as a seed investor. So I've had about half the time, about 13 years as an investor of the 25 years I had as an entrepreneur, to learn a lot through the eyes of others.
Right on. I'm super excited to dive into that experience we've talked about previously on this show of yours, not just as an entrepreneur, but also as an investor at NEA, because you've spent a lot of time focused on today's topic and others as well. So Ben, welcome back. Excited to have you. Andrew, we're going to get back to you in a little bit, so don't you worry. Pranav, welcome back, my friend. You're becoming a co-host on this show. Not necessarily Gary Fowler status just yet, but you're getting there. Welcome back to the show. A little intro and background to those who may not know you.
Firstly, thank you for the high words. I think there's a very, very long way to go. I think Gary would concur. We're very, very early on in our journey here. So to those who don't know what we're already doing, firstly, thank you for obviously having me back. Elena, Kyle, lovely to be here. I run a small family office based out of Mumbai, India. Apart from running a consumer-focused or content consumer and gaming-focused incubator based out of Mumbai, India. I'm an accidental investor, a lawyer who decided not to go any further in that field, and found myself working with early stage product companies about 7 or 8 years back. And I've been in the space investing in early stage companies, around probably 25 to 30 companies over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. We go fairly early. Pre-seed in the Indian context is the way we put it. Very often, even more so at a white paper stage. It's a lot about the relationships we build and the people we work with. So pleasure to be back and excited about this conversation.
Awesome. Welcome back. And thank you for all the good topics around gaming and everything yesterday. It was a good good conversation that we had. Emmanuel, welcome to this edition of VCTV for the first time. This is an honor. A little intro, little background.
Thanks, Kyle. So I started my career on Wall Street, did some management consulting, have been inside of a few companies, consumer internet, enterprise software, and then I am building a private equity firm, but also invest in sort of a earlier or smaller companies that sometimes overlap with venture. Have a couple investments in consumer e-commerce, and my partner has been a longtime consumer e-commerce investor. So sort of that's one of our kind of niches that we like to focus on. I spent some time at Trident Capital, which is a Palo Alto-based firm, now San Mateo, and then was part of the growth team there that spun out and created Sunstone Partners. That's my background, and now the firm that I'm building is called East Los Capital.
Wonderful. Welcome to the show, and excited to hear about more about what you're doing. And investors, one of the things we do like to do here as we're running through is also hear great examples. So those companies you may have invested in the past, don't be shy to talk about them as we move into our next topic. It's really great to hear those war stories, positive and negative, nonetheless, lessons learned. Gary,
many of them.
Many, yeah, especially in this space, which we'll get to. Gary, welcome back to the show, my friend, my co-host, my man.
Yes. How are you, Kyle? Good to see you again.
You too. You know the drill. I don't even have to direct you. You know it.
Yes. So my name's Gary Fowler, and actually on this topic, I started one of the first e-commerce consulting companies back in the roaring late 90s, and had gotten investment from Broadvision. So I actually exited that before the dot-com bubble burst. So I was real lucky, but my heart was in. I actually did Delta and American Airlines' first websites back in those days. So anyhow, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done 15 companies. The largest exit I was involved in as the original management team, on the original management team, a Click Software, sold in August of last year for $1.35 billion. I'm an AI guy. Love AI. I started Yva, which is an AI company located in Menlo Park. It's a company that we started 4 years ago. It's closing on a $700 million company. And I just love it. I've written 60 articles, actually 63 articles in AI in the last year. So I just have my next one being published in Forbes. So I love this stuff, and great to be here. Thank you.
And we're not even in the end of Q3 yet, Gary. You got 20 more articles. Get ready, ladies and gentlemen. This is your man for AI. But last but not least, Henry, welcome to the show for the first time. It's a pleasure to have you. A little intro, a little background on yourself as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kyle. Love working with you. First time between you and I. And then obviously I've been on the token quite a few times. So Henry on here, I primarily have two hats. I have an advisory firm that does interim CFO work with startups and SMBs, primarily focused on finance, operation, and strategy work. And then the second hat is I'm a venture partner for a venture fund looking for early stage companies to invest. The areas of focus are fintech, blockchain, consumer, AI, ML, IoT. I do look at other areas as well, but the other buckets will be primarily with verticals that have great opportunities and something I can understand. Also, love to hear Gary's thoughts. He wrote 63 articles. Not sure those articles are written by AI, but certainly he's pumping.
Well, that's true, and I've joked that I'm still unsure if Gary is human or AI himself as well. So I think we're all in that same position, but nonetheless, it's great content. AI is the new electricity, in Gary's words. Definitely check them out. But today we're here to talk about what's going on with consumers and e-commerce. So much, as I mentioned in the pre-show, has changed in this area. I just did a quick look up while intros were happening. Etsy. Once a niche site marketplace for tons of at-home made goods and just great products, just did in last quarter, so Q2 of 2020, did almost $350 million in mask sales. I want to throw that out there as a stat, because if you go back in Etsy's earnings, I'm sure you're not going to see that for one single product. You may see that as a total sales, not necessarily for one single product set. So this is a huge shift in everything. But before we get to that, guys, I want to come around to each of you and get your opinion on what's happening in the world around e-commerce and us as consumers. I know it may be a little different in each of the areas that you represent, but would love to hear your view on where are we and kind of what's going on. Ben, let's start with you.
Yeah, this is particularly timely. One of the companies I had funded before joining NEA was a company called Stilt, and they don't do e-commerce. They lend money to non-resident U.S. immigrants who work here or in school. And the reason I bring this up is yesterday they published a blog post on all the data they've seen across, say, 7,500 people and their spending habits. And as you could expect, there's a lot of categories that are way down. You know, auto down like 34%. Nobody goes to gas stations. Nobody fixes their cars, which is interesting because if you think about it, when people start coming back out, a lot of cars are going to need a lot of work. But things that are spiking, things that you would expect, home delivery, et cetera, are there. But one of the things I've noticed is people are spending a lot more time on their homes because they are here physically at home, as I am right now. I'll give you just a random example of this. We got a third cart to put all of our, not the refuse, but the compost in. Someone stole it. Someone stole our garbage can for tree parts and grass. And I called and they said, oh, it happens all the time. They said, we've delivered 1,000 new carts in the last month and we're out. There are none for you. You have to wait till September. So I started looking into this a little bit more, and basically home improvement products are going crazy. You know, people are doing remodels. They're doing all the work they can do themselves. They're doing organization. So everybody that touches that is doing well. So you're seeing the ripple effect across, you know, home repair and improvement is a very large category. So, you know, you're definitely seeing pockets of things that are doing very well outside of just food delivery. You're seeing pockets of deferred maintenance, which I think will result in a lot of business. And you're just seeing people have a lot more time. So the last point I'll make is that we're just seeing more and more companies that are seeing significant growth in sales. I talked to a company in the e-commerce space yesterday. It's a web-born brand, some really interesting products, really like their focus. They're going to grow 4x this year over last, and they're a very small company. And they're doing it almost all word of mouth because people have the time to dig out there, find the things that express themselves, find the things that they need. And there's plenty of products. The Nintendo Switch is one example, but there's a lot of others that, you know, you couldn't get basketball hoops for quite a long time, as an example. So lots of different categories. It is a temporal reality. And I think that what will happen is you will see this launching of volume for a lot of types of businesses. And I think a lot of that'll stick. And that's what's pretty exciting because nobody's going back to the old way of doing business. And that's true in commerce as well.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about on yesterday's show around travel and hospitality. And to your point, I brought up the camping chair example. I ordered a camping chair that normally would be here in 24 to 48 hours. It's been 3 weeks. I don't know. I just wanted to sit for a weekend, and now I can't. So,
by the way, I ordered some UVC lights, which are used for disinfecting. It took 3 months. I just got them yesterday, and I ordered them in February or March. So
it's wild. And this also plays into a previous topic around logistics and the idea of hyper localization or hyper logistics that we're going to be potentially moving into as a trend we've started to see with a lot more brick and mortar retail outlets opening up as these logistics centers more localized, to Ben's point as well. So get ready for that. Emmanuel, I'm going to come to you next. What are you seeing in this space? How are you seeing things kind of unfold right now as the current state?
Sure. So I'll have my vignette stem from a couple of investments that I've made. One in a company called Nadine West, which is in Austin, Texas, and they're in the kind of subscription box service delivery. So it is consumer e-commerce, but it's a different business model, right? And most people would probably know about Stitch Fix and some of those types of business models. They've actually what I take away from this is that they've adapted immediately to the COVID-19 environment, in that what they were shipping before, they're still shipping some of that, but they also added like masks and other things that their users and customers wanted. And so what I thought was interesting is how are all these consumer plays that are more, they have to react faster than, let's call it an enterprise software business, right? Because they're actually talking to customers, to consumers on a regular basis. And so the nimble ones, the ones that either are well funded or they are profitable already, or they're just more nimble for whatever reason, they're the ones that have reacted faster, and those are the ones that are doing even better in COVID-19. And so Nadine West is doing great. Without sharing all their numbers, they're double figures, in terms of millions of revenue, and just continuing to grow. The growth rate actually has not slowed down during COVID-19. So just a great kind of example. Another company I'm invested in, this is actually in Mexico, a company called Glitzy. They actually got impacted a lot because of COVID-19, because their services were essentially wellness services on demand, a domicilio in Spanish, at your door, right? And so all of a sudden everyone's like, whoa, don't come to my door. And so they adapted in that they started offering most of this stuff through virtual, right? And so they're like, how do you cut your hair at home, right? How do you give your partner a massage, right? Things like that. But also, how do you then have healthcare practitioners be able to provide consultations via essentially telehealth? I think in the U.S. we sometimes take it for granted, but around the world maybe the telehealth system isn't as robust. And so anyway, it allowed for a new business model to essentially get created. And now the company is actually just in July hit higher numbers than in February, which was their highest month then, and doing really, really well, and about to go out to raise more money. So anyway, the takeaway is that some of these kind of consumer e-commerce companies, especially the smaller ones that are nimble or either well-funded or already profitable, are able to essentially adapt because they're hearing from their customers at a faster clip, and they can iterate quicker on whatever business model they're already doing, to adapt to this environment.
And that's a good point. And really quick, I want to touch on one thing you mentioned before we continue around, is Mexico. So we've talked about this on previous episodes. Latin America, but specifically Mexico, has seen a surge in e-commerce activity, whether that's purchasing of products, new companies, investment in new areas. Are you seeing this? Is this true? I mean, other guests have mentioned this as investors.
Part of the thesis was essentially the middle class of Mexico is not going to stop growing. You still have currency risk. There's still, everyone's spooked from the 90s and even early 2000s sometimes, and obviously there's other issues in Mexico. But as an investor, when you look at just kind of secular 200 million people in a middle class that's growing, and a lot of the same services that other either developed or developing countries are taking advantage of, like Mexico is as well, and they're our neighbor. If you're in the U.S., at least I'm in the U.S., so it's much easier to kind of get access to that market. And I personally have a Mexican heritage, so even easier. I can go down there and speak the language, right, and connect on a cultural basis. So as an investor, how do you, all of you or many of you are investors, so how do you use your advantages, not just because you know how to analyze a company in a market, but then to use those advantages to actually get into companies that otherwise you may have not been able to get into, and so that's how I see it kind of coming together.
It's a great point, and thank you for sharing that, Gary. I want to come to you next. What are you seeing as the current state of things happening in these spaces right now?
Yeah, I mean, look at the sales. I mean, online sales are up 76% as of June. 76%. I mean, it's huge. It's what, $73.2 billion industry. So we've got a tremendous opportunity out there. I mean, people aren't moving around. They're staying home and they need to buy products. And I don't know if you're like me, but I'm on Amazon and I'm in Walmart and we're buying buying a lot of products there. And quite frankly, I love it. I don't have to carry the Fiji water to the house. I just have Walmart deliver it. I love it. So buy 3-4 cases, before I'd buy one and I have to go back again. Now I buy 3 or 4 of them. Here's the other thing that's happening. The sales have been down a bit in the grocery stores. They fell 18% because people weren't stockpiling. It was kind of crazy. They were buying toilet paper, and I was one of them, right? Toilet paper and towels, Bounty towels. I actually went to West Marine, serious story. I wanted to figure out, all the towels were sold out and they're on eBay. They're like 5 times as much. I went to West Marine and I bought Scott towels for boats. I bought a whole case of them. And it was the only place I could find them for a reasonable price, and they're still double the price. So, you know, you go out there and we still have that mentality. It's still a good thing with all the COVID that's out there to stay away, to social distance as much as possible. But at the same time, Kyle, you got to live your life. So I think that, you know, this is not going to stop in the near term. I mean, we've got until this vaccine is approved to get through this. I mean, this herding mentality and everything else. I don't know about the rest of us here, but I'm not so interested in doing the herding mentality because I really don't want to get it. Because everybody that I know had it, including my daughter, said it was not good. So I'm not interested. So I think it's going to keep expanding. We're going to, you know, people are doing things differently. Think about it. Our whole idea of shopping has changed. Look at the stores that are going out of business, right? I was just at Pier 1 Imports, stopped by. People got the masks on. They're having the discounts. We are fundamentally changed, and the companies that really adapt and really use artificial intelligence a lot more to be able to figure out what kind of products and services we want are going to win. Cross-selling, upselling, those kind of things. You know, now it's the time. You've got eyeballs. You've got an audience. Look at MacBooks. Apple sales are going through the roof because people need phones and MacBooks. It's crazy.
It's true. As a fun point on the MacBooks, I mean, they came in stock and then sold out, even though they have new ones coming out potentially. We'll just say as a rumor, they are selling out. And you're right. Products, Ben mentioned this as well. I mean, webcams, as something as simple as a webcam, because people are working from home, were sold out for weeks. You know, the joke Ben was teasing me about before the show about mics, you know, Yeti mics, these types of things. All of these products, to Gary's point and to others, data, first off, products are selling out. People are leveraging data better than they have before to figure out where these products are going and leveraging that to better serve on a logistics purpose as well, which is creating a whole new world and hopefully new products as we start to move into the future. And Pranav, I see you shaking your head. I'm coming to you. I want to know your perspective, and then we're going to get into India as well. And then Henry, I'm coming to you right afterwards. So Pranav, what are you seeing as kind of the current state of things around e-commerce?
It's been probably the most unusual exponential growth from a consumer behavior and how people are purchasing and how people have sort of come online. It's such accelerated digital adoption where individuals who 8 months back were absolutely nowhere near the funnel of being a transactor on any online platform are suddenly opened up to the idea of it, whether it be through convenience, through absolutely having to, whatever may be the reason. And India has an active English sort of e-commerce user base of about 250 million odd individuals. Whereas when you look at the entire rest of the country, we're a country with 22 scheduled languages and a lot more languages across the entire diaspora of the population. Apps that are building for tier 2, tier 3 for rural India, which is more than a 500 to 700 million large individual audience, are seeing tremendous acceptance, tremendous growth, and spending patterns are actually shifting more towards the middle class income, towards the middle class in tier 2 cities, where the average, where the wallet share has just shifted completely. People have also started going from spending on wants, from needs to wants in various scenarios. Like Ben mentioned and various else mentioned, people are sitting at home. And in India, at the end of the day, fortunately, unfortunately, people are sort of, a lot of people in a very finite amount of space. So people are always looking for ways to create distractions for themselves. And we face the same supply chain issues with orders not coming in for long periods of time. But the unprecedented amount of capital that's flowing towards consumer enterprises and unique niche businesses. And I'll give you an example. There was a company that it basically does non-alcoholic beer, which caters to a very unusual segment of the Indian market. In India, a penetration for a beer company is fairly minimal. When you talk of for a non-alcoholic beer for a particular class of individual, is a much smaller segment. But the kind of traction that they've seen over the course of the last 6 months has been tremendous, because their sales used to be seasonal. But suddenly all of their users were sitting at home looking for ways to sort of keep themselves happy, entertained, and their numbers were actually flying through the roof. So I think the forced digital adoption is going to take this organized retail market of less than 20% to hopefully 30 or 45 or 50% over the course of the next 3 years. And it's money flowing everywhere, from the consumer to the company, from the investor to the company, from the company to different resources and building the right kind of supply chain networks. Because India is still sort of putting together their entire value pipeline. Hence, there are a lot of opportunities across the board.
And hopefully probably playing Ludo King.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, playing some Ludo King, drinking some non-alcoholic beer, getting their groceries delivered, everything without ever having to leave the home. It's great. Pranav is an expert in gaming, and if those who weren't able to tune in a few days ago, we did talk about that. That's why I bring it up. The #1 game in India, I believe, also seeing just crazy numbers across the board. So with that being said, Henry, I want to come to you next. You sit in a very unique part of the world.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm in New York City. We had the title of epicenter of COVID-19. Luckily, it's not anymore. Fortunately, unfortunately, shifted down south in our country here. But anyway, I'll make a few comments. That has been touched. A lot of things, great things, been touched by my colleagues here. So I want to talk about the history of e-commerce first. So if you look at the history of e-commerce, it's the advent of internet. So it was invented in the 60s by the government. That will commercialize literally in the mid-90s. The first web browser was called Mosaic by Netscape in '94. Andreessen, they call it A16Z. It's part of the co-founders of the fund. Then shortly thereafter, you got Amazon, who opened a marketplace. In the late '90s and early 2000, there are many companies trying to do like these sort of direct-to-consumer type of businesses. Just to name a few off the top of my head, 20 plus years ago. eToys, online selling toys, and you have a web van, literally selling grocery online, both of which among many went bust. Were they great models? Yeah, they were. But unfortunately, just the timing was off. Fast forward 20 years later, so e-commerce have been humming along, the last 20 plus years. Certainly have accelerated as a result of COVID-19. People were locked down. People were concerned. They could still go to stores, but some of them were concerned about, catching the virus. So they were just ordering a lot of things online. I invested in a company. It's a lot more than anything else. It's basically an e-commerce for innovative beers. A few months ago, talking about beers that Pranav talked about in India. This is alcoholic beers. The business just went to the roof since the pandemic's happened. Now, I think it's called Taproom. They would have gone even more to the roof. Very interestingly enough, and it's how smart enough that the government mentioned liquor stores are considered essential businesses. Liquor stores, essential businesses. So if people cannot buy beers at the store, the business would have even gone to the roof a couple more times more. People were just locking in, hanging out, have a couple of treats themselves. So once again, I think this digitization, e-commerce just been accelerated, but I want to just add one more point to it. People talking about the death of stores. Yeah, I can see that already, but I wouldn't write it off totally. I'll tell you why. Yes, it is easy to sit on our butts to order things online, delivered to our houses or wherever we are residences. But ultimately, we are human. We are animals, human animals. We need the social interaction aspect of it. People talked about omni-channel experience for consumer goods. Maybe one day it will go away when VR, AR gets very, very advanced. But I think even when the virus goes away, whenever that is, a year, 2 years, 3 years later, we're going to go back into some of these stores for social experiences. Malls are a great example of that. People are not going to the malls to simply buy things, but they want to maybe have a meal in the food court. They want to interact with their friends, meeting new people, and just experience things in some of these stores with a very experimental type of things. So I wouldn't write that off. I think it'll be very interesting to see how businesses transform, how stores will be transformed as a result of COVID. And I'll leave it at that at the moment.
Well, you bring up my my next question, and a great point is where's the opportunity, right? We're as investors, we've now painted the picture of what's going on, but the question now is, in the next 12 to 18 months, where should we be placing the bets, right? Where should we be looking at opportunities? Where should we, as entrepreneurs, be building for? Where does this all begin? Because it's not a short-term thing. I mean, you're bringing up all great points, and there are little micro trends within there that are going to live on. I see all of you smiling and smirking in different ways. And Andrew, get ready. We're coming to you in about 5 to 7 minutes. But Ben, let's go ahead and start with you. Where are the areas of opportunity that we should be paying attention to as investors in these areas?
Well, I think there's sort of three macro things I would think about here. One, the big are getting bigger. I remember when I started my e-commerce business in '93, I met Jeff Bezos early on. He was a happy young kid, sort of like me, although he did much better, and he's far less happy these days. Happy financially, but he seems a lot gruffer. And he had sort of identified a market, but people had a misunderstanding then. They thought he wanted to sell books. It was very clear from the beginning, Jeff wanted share of wallet, and he's pretty much got it all. I bring this up because on the list of people I don't want to compete with, Jeff is pretty much number one. So there are a lot of categories where even though sales are ramping, the big getting bigger is taking up a lot of market share. Now, having said that, there's plenty of categories where Amazon and others have failed. As an example, Amazon has not been able to succeed in fashion. And you've seen a variety of companies kick up in that category, a category I know pretty well. So there are opportunities there. Also, you have, in addition to the fact that people are now shopping online more, a classic generational shift. I believe that every generation wants its own brands. If you think about sort of, I'm a relatively traditional dresser, a preppy guy. Well, so my father's era coming off of would be Brooks Brothers, and I picked up a little bit of that. But then you went to people liking Polo, and then it was this new brand called Tommy Hilfiger and Nautica, and a brand I created as well. And then you got to Vineyard Vines, and J. Crew got shoved in there in the middle. And then you had Bonobos, right? So you see an evolution of brands as they are identified by the end consumer. And so that's a hot button as well, and something that can tap into the ethos of what people care about. You're seeing a lot of cause-related brands in e-commerce. That's been useful. Second thing is everything's been elevated. So the baseline is now bigger. Now it's harder to break through the clutter, but at the same time, once you do, you just have the opportunity to create a bigger business faster. Sometimes that's augmented by technology. As an example, NEA is an investor in Casper. This is an interesting story because they created something very cool. You pack up a mattress into a box and ship it to you, and it's an aspirational mattress. You're buying a $2,500 value for about $1,000. Now, at the same time, while that company became public, they've got probably 27 competitors that have knocked them off. So innovations are important, but how can you protect them? And then thirdly, there'll be things that are temporal at best. I mentioned that people's maintenance of their cars is way down. So clearly things related to that will jump up in a while. But is that going to last? Don't know. I do think, it's funny because we are sort of torn between two things. We are seeing a tremendous amount of bankruptcies in retail right now. And I think these are a long time coming. This is a very Darwinian reality we're going through. A lot of retail has been very weak for very long. And they've been able to, it's funny, look, I actually had only 2 jobs in my life other than being an entrepreneur. One of them was at Macy's. But I don't know how Macy's has stayed in business this long. And every time they deliver positive earnings, it's because of some real estate manipulation. They've trained the consumer to live off the one-day sale. The selection's not particularly interesting. There's just actually no reason they should exist anymore, in my opinion. And I even like the people I know there. It's just, what do you achieve? So, finding the niches that make sense and going deep there. Think of it as, it's better to be an inch wide and a mile deep. Really, really good at that one thing, that one set of products, and either creating the new one, the web-born brand, or just having selection and variety. Chewy's is a phenomenal success story, right? Of something that, was mentioned, pets.com was a failure, but Chewy's has been a really great success. So last point, I said there were those 3. It's always useful to look to the past. The fact that something failed in the past doesn't mean it will fail again. The question always comes to why now and why you, of the entrepreneur. And I do think there are many things that have been tried in the past, which now that you have the increased baseline, the end of all digital laggards, everybody is online. That is where they're doing things. You have the chance to make things work that didn't work in the past. And that's pretty much in every category. And so I don't think it's about category X or Y. I think it's about anything and everything that hasn't been conquered yet.
Absolutely. I mean, look at Shopify. Again, I mentioned
Sure.
SD earlier. I mean, these are two marketplaces and platforms. I mean, let's start there. Platforms that are marketplaces for people to buy and sell, aka transact. And you have seen these two companies. We're gonna separate their public market earnings and those things that are coming out. These are two companies that have allowed for what Ben just mentioned, people to look to the past and open up these niche products and sell a ton and really give people what they want or what they think they want in ways that they never were able to or never thought about possibly before. It's amazing. And Emmanuel, I see you keep muting and unmuting. I want to get to you. So same question to you.
So I'm not going to be as eloquent as Ben. A lot of facts and figures there, and all of you should have taken copious notes. I'll add to. I've personally invested in a sort of fast fashion brand that just took advantage of the Shopify ability to just go direct to consumer, and I think there's massive opportunity for that. Although as a venture capitalist, you're usually not investing in just individual brands. Sometimes you are. And the company I mentioned before, Nadine West, Bonobos and sort of that world, that's exactly what's kind of creating its own brand for a kind of middle market, sub kind of aspirational type of brand, but enough for someone to feel good about themselves, right? And I'm going to give a more maybe boring answer because I think there is a lot of innovation, but at the same time, the people that control the picks and shovels of the industry, right? So you mentioned Shopify, look at Magento, which is part of Adobe. There's these platforms that are massive, and they're the ones that are dominating in the public stock markets because their valuation is going through the roof. But there's the people that know those ecosystems are like along for the ride and they are profitable and growing really, really fast. So if you're out there and you're an entrepreneur trying to figure out how do I play this, right? You're not going to create the next Amazon. Maybe you are, but likelihood is you're not, right? I don't want to compete against Jeff Bezos today. But you can create a pretty interesting, whether it's just boring, services to integrate with Shopify and Magento, or if you are deep into the software, how can you build some kind of software that integrates with them to add some layer that whatever the customer really needs is able to get through that extra layer of software that you can add. So that's how I would be playing it, whether I'm an entrepreneur or quite frankly, as an investor, that's how I'm playing it, where I'm looking at some of these maybe not so flashy companies that my friends in, looking for that sort of fast growth VC play. I'm kind of looking that next layer, which is, maybe a tech-enabled service or even a services company that is still growing 30% year over year, 40% year over year with very little funding and not burning cash.
Absolutely. One thing to note about that's a Salesforce model, by the way, right? Salesforce built this unique platform. People put third-party applications into and integrations into it. And then this thing called Salesforce Ventures showed up, and Salesforce Ventures started investing and double dipping on the acquisition side as well. So Ben, Emmanuel, you guys have great points. Gentlemen, we're going to pause here for the second half of our show. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to welcome up two entrepreneurs who have joined us today to share us what they are building and what their products are being built in these worlds as well. Each of them will have 5 minutes, a hard 5-minute cap, and then cut off. We'll each give some feedback to both. And then as we transition to that second half, I'm going to come to the rest of you around the industry or the areas of opportunity, your advice as investors. So audience, stay tuned. If you're looking to make or get investment in this space, this second half of the show is directly for you. All right, I've got a lightning round of questions for everybody, so get ready. All right, Andrew, you're up first. Are you ready? All right, so investors, as Andrew gets his screen ready to share, again, Andrew's gonna have 5 minutes, hard 5 minutes. Andrew, I will cut you off. Elena will shut off the screen at 5 minutes, okay? He'll have 5 minutes to pitch us. Afterwards, we'll go on to our next entrepreneur, and then afterwards, we'll come back to get feedback on both. So make sure you take notes. And with that, Andrew, if you are ready, I'm gonna start the clock, okay?
All right. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all and see you again, Gary. And it's very relevant. We're talking about e-commerce because Tune.fm, my company I'm going to tell you about, we're sort of creating a new form of e-commerce based on micropayments. So it's the evolution of e-commerce that goes past the single transaction and into streaming payments that happen seamlessly under the hood. So Tune FM is a music streaming platform with an integrated micropayments token, and it's a marketplace that facilitates transactions between artists and fans that happen autonomously. So the music market as a whole is approaching 20 billion, and only in the last few years has actually been growing very significantly, 20-30% per year, after declining for over 2 decades from being totally hit by Napster and downloads. And so what's driving this growth is this huge uptick in streaming and the subscription business model that they have of 10 or 20 bucks a month. But there's still huge problems where artists are squeezed and get less than half a penny per play, and sometimes it takes over 2 years to get paid. So there's a lot of gatekeepers and barriers to entry, and a lot of sort of geographical siloing with the licensing paradigm that's out there. So our mission is to democratize music for all people all around the world by leveling the playing field and enabling artists to go direct to fan and control their rights. And if artists are already licensed or on a label, they can keep their existing agreements. But for most artists, the 99% of unlicensed music out there, we're cutting out the middleman and enabling them to earn a living by taking out what's essentially over 80% of the money going to the publishers instead of the artists for streaming. So we're going to flip that on its head. So we start with a music discovery platform that's essentially a social network, as well as a streaming platform like Spotify, where artists can basically create their own pages, upload their own music. We only accept lossless, high fidelity music, and we have a lot of really great music and audio technology under the hood that's running that. And essentially, there's a non-exclusive hybrid license that allows us to stream their music for compensation in jam tokens. So the jam token is our own proprietary cryptocurrency, and we're actually the first token to ever run on Hedera Hashgraph. So we developed a totally new token protocol that's essentially a sharding architecture that's never been done before with parent and child smart contracts that enables us to run a similar to an ERC20 style token. But because Hedera Hashgraph is a distributed ledger technology and directed acyclical graph versus a blockchain, it's still cryptocurrency, but it's a completely different architecture, makes it way faster, more secure, way lower fees. And because Ethereum and Bitcoin fees can be $5 to $10, and things can take sometimes hours or days to actually process, micropayments and these types of new business models are not possible with the traditional blockchain tech. So we need something that's sort of best in breed, next generation of distributed ledger technology, and that we identified as Hedera Hashgraph, which enables hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, fractions of a penny for fees. So this allows us to have a new type of business model for e-commerce that is a sort of pay-as-you-go streaming payments that happen automatically under the hood. So when the music gets played, the artist gets paid, all while people are enjoying their time. So we presented and spoke at Hedera 18, which is the first developer conference, and we raised 100,000 to be part of the Helix Accelerator in Hong Kong. So and Helix is specifically focused on dApps developing on Hedera, and we've raised about 750 to date, and we're raising right now 1.5 million with a safe T, which is a safe note with a token option. So there's sort of both sides there. And so the way the jam token works, don't have too much time to get into the nitty gritty, but essentially both fans and artists can get paid. Artists get paid when fans stream their music, but fans can get paid for helping curate the music and discovering new music that artists are promoting. So artists can actually use the jam token to promote their own music in a sort of advertising sense where the song itself is the creative. And so there's micro incentives that we can have and gamification of different rewards and levels and badges for anything that helps the community ecosystem grow at large. And essentially we're creating a global music economy with a global currency just for music that allows all different kinds of musical goods and commodities and services to be traded, where the main commodity being streaming by the minute, of course. And we actually break it down to the second. So if you stream 12 seconds of a song, you're paying that artist for exactly that 12 seconds.
All right, Andrew. Unfortunately, we just hit time. So I apologize. But again, thank you very much for sharing what you've built. As we've talked about previously on this show, it takes a lot to get up on a physical or virtual stage nonetheless to share what you've been working on and so passionate about. So investors, please hold all questions, comments, notes until we get done with Anish here in just a moment, as he is now up as well. Anish, are you there? All right, do go ahead and share your screen, and you've got 5 minutes, just like Andrew on the clock.
Sure, just let me pull up my screen.
5 minutes goes fast.
It does.
Yeah.
Better than 2 and better than 4. Don't worry. We all right,
Okay,
Anish, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. So let me. I hope you are able to see my slide decks.
We're
So
good.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. So let me quickly go through what we are trying to do. So we are 11 cents. We are looking at chemical and oil and gas sector. Essentially, that is where the key disruption is going to happen by digital platform. And there are 3 key things we are looking at from the financial efficiencies, operational efficiency, and productivity performance. And I'll talk about it. What is the challenge today which we are trying to address? It's all about the oil and gas and chemical industries is the data. Today, less than 10% of data is being used for the plant performance improvement. There's a lack of reliability-oriented maintenance, and the key challenge is the process variability, the OE losses, which essentially the entire value chain is getting impacted by lower yield and energy losses. So we see an opportunity to impact this industry by almost $2 million an year for a mid-sized kind of plant by leveraging our AI platform. So that's essentially is what we are working on. This is the opportunity size for the entire end-to-end process improvement, which is a much larger opportunity size of $300 billion. Essentially, most of these aspects we are covering in our platform, be it the processes optimization, making the furnaces more smarter, bringing a smart plant operations, and integrating with energy efficiency and safety features. So that's pretty much which we are addressing, specifically starting with oil and gas and chemical, but it can be expanded to metals and the pharma manufacturing as well. So this is what is our solution is in a very simple terminology. The solution converts any kind of equipment, a typical OT equipment, which is operational technology equipment, by leveraging this platform called iSense4i into a digital twin that can give the predictive and the prescriptive insights into the real-time performance of the entire downstream processes. We have filed a couple of patents around it, and this is what we are trying to do in terms of leveraging this platform to enable all kind of a cognitive functions for cleaner and optimized streamlined production process, which can create the factory of future. It can enable the remote plant optimization by giving a complete visibility inside the plant operations and minimize the workforce needed for the floor, specifically because in the post-COVID-19 situation. And there is the entire solution is enabled by digital twin templates and Smart Edge, which is a secure and versatile connector that can connect to any of the OT systems. It's a plug and play platform. That's essentially, we have already done 2 live deployments, one with a large chemical ethylene plant in US, where our platform is already live, and we are working with the second customer in US which is an oil and gas customer. So this is all our platform is about. The platform enables the various kind of sensors, connectors, and digital twin. On the other side, it delivers the output in terms of the AI-led operations, early warning system, and smart furnaces. Just to quickly give you the savings that a typical large-size chemical plant can see in the entire lifetime by having this platform is between $20 to $100 million, because that's the lifetime life of a typical furnaces, which is typically 15 years lifetime of a furnace, where we can bring in and we can improve the overall efficiency of the furnace. Not just the furnace, even it can take care of rest of the other surrounding equipments like heat exchangers, steam boilers, and other equipments. So this is what we are looking at it. And just to give the competitive landscape, which we compared with what today the system integrators like IBM, Accenture are having, or compared to any of the product companies, specifically Siemens or Dassault System, Microsoft Azure, or there are some niche companies with whom we will be competing like Sight Machine and Synavision. So we have compared our solution. We found that our platform is domain specific, integrated platform that can host all kind of features in one platform, which is today market is missing today. And this is the more of a pass-led subscription model, though there is certain NRI revenues which will also come in terms of one-time customization of these products. From our company perspective, this is what our revenue plan is. We were targeting to reach to a 150 million plus kind of revenue in the 5 years. We already have clocked 150K and we did a 200K seed round last year. Yeah, that's all I just wanted to put.
Well,
Yeah.
Perfect timing. You ended right on time. So guys, again, thank you very much for both taking the time to share with us what you did. One quick piece of advice before we get to our investors for their feedback for each of you. When an investor has to drop their glasses down and get really close to the screen, I won't call out who, that's a sign that you've got a little too much on your slides. So take that to heart when you go back to look at your pitches and review them. Think about having both an investor pitch that you send so they can print out or they can read in more detail, and one that you present. And one that you present has a little less information. You're talking, you don't want us reading, you want us listening and being engaged. So just something to note, it happens to all of us. Been there, done that as well myself. So just something as advice for each of you. Now, let's start with Andrew. Guys, I'm gonna look to each of you. Ben, you're unmuted first. After that, I'm gonna come around to each of you for quick comments and feedback for Andrew, and then we'll do Anish, and then we'll get to the second half of the show. Andrew, you're up first. It won't give you much time to respond, so just hold comments. Everyone's available to connect afterwards, but I wanna make sure they give you feedback as well. Ben, let's start with you. Any feedback or comments for Andrew?
So I think it's a very crowded space. The biggest question I would have going into this would be, why will the end consumer jump through these extra hoops to enable this model when there's so many models that fill their need? I've learned the hard way. I ran a menswear company. We made everything in the United States. We were very proud of that. Nobody cared. The sort of better version of what was out there. What they cared about was the product was better than other people's product in terms of its visuals. So I would really want to understand why someone, and particularly once you're using a token, now you've elevated the need for technical expertise to a level that's quite significant. My daughter's perfectly happy with Spotify. Why would she move over? Now, last point though, Patreon's a fascinating company. I think they're doing a great job. Is there a model like that? Is there something that just creates that extra level of connection? And maybe that is exactly the point. But having said that, you're adding a lot. They've got to care, they've got to want that extra connection, and they've got to enable your token. That is usually one challenge is plenty. 2 or 3 seems like a lot.
And maybe to Emmanuel's point too, you are an integrator for some of those companies like Spotify, Pandora, and others as well, or Apple Music, as there's many companies doing that. So there's an opportunity for you too, Andrew. Emmanuel, any comments or feedback? I might have stole your thunder, so I apologize.
You said exactly what I was going to say. but on Ben's note, it just felt more complicated than it needed to be. And I personally would have loved to just look at kind of financials, but 2 to 3 years down the line, more unit economics, right? I love the kind of slicing up of this whole transaction and this whole ecosystem, because maybe there's some value that you can extract out of transactions that are happening. I get the macro trends, I get the reversal on kind of the business and the revenue growth, but just kind of making it a little more simple and then getting to what this business will look like actually.
Awesome, thank you. Henry, any feedback?
Yeah, so I think a lot of comments were made, but I'm just going to make one very simply. So, I have always made a prediction. I could be wrong. I think in about 10 years, we're going to have a lot less cryptocurrency. I think we're only going to have a very small handful, if any. That's number one. Number two is, I think something for the founder to think about. There are a lot of projects talking about utility tokens. I think I'm very big on CBDC. That's another topic. Happy to make more comments, whenever that is. Than cryptocurrency. Not that I don't believe in cryptocurrency, but the question is, do we need that many utility tokens? I think Andrew talked about utility tokens. It's not a knock on the project. I totally get it. You know, it's a direct to consumer. It's a marketplace. You know, cutting out the middleman. You know, traditional music house who takes a big cut. But you know, with the utility tokens, do we need that many? You know, something for you to think. I think I have my answer to that. I think something for you guys to think about. You know, as you're building your project. So I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. So guys, I want to switch real quick over because we are almost at time to Anish, sorry, I apologize for mispronouncing, to see any comments or feedback from him. Pranav, let's start with you, Ben, Gary, and we'll go around. So Pranav, any feedback for Anish?
Sorry, I dropped off for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's just one of the fundamental things I think that Kyle pointed out too. I think driving the narrative as any sort of founder, any promoter, and being able to sort of find the right things to speak about in the context of what you're speaking about. I heard a lot about efficiency. I heard a lot less about the product. So I mean, if I'm being very honest, I don't think I heard enough to be able to gauge the full utility of the product. You hear efficiency, you hear sort of the kind of product that you're looking to build and the market and the sort of size that you're looking to cater to. But I think the focus can be a lot more about how the product offering itself is perhaps unique, and what sort of is the linchpin to why someone would want to gravitate to this particular opportunity as well.
And for someone who's been in this space for a long time, you know, the things that I remember from the presentation, which is good and bad, is digital twins and IoT. But what more? Where's the meat? I want to walk away thinking this is something I know we need or can invest in. So Gary, to you, Ben, to you, and then we're going to come to
yeah, I mean, I just want to say, you know, just in general, guys, and then I'll drill down in terms of for Avnish. But I mean, the situation is when you're doing these kind of online presentations, you got to wow them, right? So you got to like catch their attention right off. And, you know, you want to practice. You want to have intonations of your voice up and down, in and out. So it's highly important. The other thing is, I love what you're doing, Avnish. And I think from my standpoint, I know a bit about AI and the Internet of Things, especially applied to manufacturing. So for me, it's sweet, but you gotta like make it captivating. The difference between sweet to somebody that knows and captivating for other people that don't is just drill down. Guys, there's a rule, check it out. A good friend of mine, Guy Kawasaki, wrote the 10-20-30 rule. Check it out for PowerPoint presentations. Seriously, it works. What you don't want to do is you don't want to make your PowerPoint presentation look like it's a research project because it's not interesting. Entertain the people. Half your job is information. The other half is entertainment. Entertain them. Make it exciting. And if you talk about what an ROI is at the end, doesn't matter who's on this call right now, they're going to listen to you because that's where it really hits home. That's where it really hits in the pocket. So talk about that. And the other thing is revenue. If you've got revenue, that always gets people attention, then build up from there. So I like what you have, Avnish. I think it's interesting and there's an opportunity with it.
Ben, any feedback or comments for Anish?
So this advice is all really good. It follows what I would say. I will keep this macro. My son recently was asked to write a cover letter for a job opportunity. He showed it to me. I said, you know, it's too long. I'm not going to read it. Go fix it. He worked on it. He came back. I said, it's still too long. I took his first paragraph and turned it into 2 sentences. Less is more. Nobody reads. Nobody wants to read. You have 5 minutes to capture somebody's attention. Who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? Who do you do it for? What does it cost? You know, what's the value prop? There's an old saying, keep it simple, blank, right? Like the only thing you can do in an initial pitch, and this was something that took me a hard time to learn. By the way, you do something I do all the time. I try to get everything I know into that minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, like, blah, 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 blah. But people don't process at that level. Fine, don't bury the lead, which you did, but you got to at the last point, you know, savings of 10, 20 to $100 million. Awesome. We do X, which saves you Y, and here's why it's going to be enormous. Like you've got to find the hook because all you can do, and this is true for any entrepreneur pitching in 5 minutes, you might think if you put it all in there, people will get so excited that they want to find out more. No, they listen to what you say. And if I am reading that document, I am not listening to you. And I was the guy who was like, wait, what is that? It's like, there's a saying in venture I learned the hard way. It's called an eye chart. where, it's an exercise of your ability to read. So think about the fact that this is my final and most core point for all entrepreneurs. All you can do in that first meeting is get the hook in the mouth. If you don't get the hook in the mouth, that fish is swimming away. Okay, the reeling in can take months. You have a deck of reeling. You have a multi-month reeling in deck. What you need is the deck that gets the hook in the mouth, gets people excited, and makes them want to learn more. That's where I think every entrepreneur should focus in these accelerated, time-starved environments.
Absolutely. Great advice. Thank you all as well. Now, guys, we are at the top of the hour. So Andrew and Nish, here's what you get. 30 seconds, and I will cut you off. 30 seconds. Give a shout out of where everyone can find you online. All right. So one-liner, and where can everyone find you online along with the company? And then investors are coming to you for closing thoughts and where everyone can find you, so that not only Andrew and Anish can connect with you, but so can our audience as well. Anish, let's start with you. You were last to go. A quick one-liner, and then where can everyone find you online? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I was mute. So one liner about it is we are trying to disrupt this oil and gas industry with predictive maintenance and safety 4.0. That's all defines us.
Awesome. Where can everyone find you online?
Livensense.com.
What's your web address?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Livensense.com.
Perfect. Andrew, to you, one-liner, where can everyone find you online?
Sure. Real quick to just address the feedback. Essentially, the token is totally obfuscated from the user, so it's a very simple sign-in process that they don't actually have to use. And the reason why it's necessary is because micropayments aren't possible with credit cards. And so 65% of customers are willing to pay artists with cryptocurrency in order to help them. And we just make that whole process seamless and simple. And to check it out, just go to tune.fm. And you can email me at andrew@tune.fm, or my full name, Andrew Antar, at hero.fm, which is the company name. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Anish and Andrew. Again, it takes a lot to get up on stage. Really appreciate you both sharing what you've got. Gentlemen, we're coming around for closing thoughts. Closing thoughts on today's topic, and then also where can everyone find you online? Pranav, let's start with you. We'll come around.
Closing thoughts in general, and I think that's an Indian context. One of the things we say very often in India for a lot of founders is everybody's looking for a tech co-founder. In India, everybody's searching for the next tech visionary who can help them build their product. And I heard this once at a conversation that more people should be looking for chief oratory officers in India, because I think the understanding of how, like Ben mentioned, to hook individuals into conversation, I think is an evolved skill that is something that most individuals, at least trying to build a consumer brand, must sort of try and imbibe as far as they possibly can. And yeah, as a general closing thought, anybody looking to obviously look at the Indian market, any insights, any feedback, I'd be happy to chat. I'd happy to love and speak a little bit more about that. You can find me online on LinkedIn, on different social platforms, and I'd love to chat and interact with anybody interested in the consumer space in India.
Perfect. Gary.
Thanks.
Yep. I think, guys, it's a practice. What I did from my own standpoint, you could do it online. I actually took an acting course and business course at Stanford. It combined it for public speaking, and that's how I really practiced a lot. So practice. Use the guidelines of Guy Kawasaki because they're really important. Wow the people and get them excited. Wrap it up with some type of an ask, and you're there with it. You've got some interesting ideas, just refine them a bit more and put them in the right context. So you can reach me, Gary, at GSDVS.com. I'm happy to help and look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing hasn't hurt. So I'll make, a lot of great things have been made comments by my colleagues here. But one thing I would address is, I think, Kyle, you talked about what are the opportunities over the next 12 months or maybe even the next 1 to 3 years. Yeah, so there are a lot, there are different things. But I think one of the things to me is the most important thing. It's the team ultimately. Because the world that we're living, it's just changing so fast. You might have a great idea. You know what? All it takes is COVID-19, your great idea, it's gone, or you have to shift to something else. So having a team that can work together, being able to pivot and nimble, because ultimately you start with something. You know, if you look at Amazon, all these great businesses are the same. They start with something. They just have changed so much over time. So just having a guy like, you know, I think it was Ben or somebody else, you know, who wouldn't bet against Amazon, who wouldn't bet against Jeff Bezos. Yeah, I definitely say both. I wouldn't bet against either one of them. So, so Jeff certainly have done a great job. It's not just, you know, they're, you know, for a long time, the company never really took off in terms of, you know, profits, but he had a long-term view. Ultimately, he's become extremely successful. So I would continue to stress the team, being nimble, being able to pivot, and just being creative. That's all. Thank you.
Awesome, love it, Emmanuel. Ben, we're coming to you last. Emmanuel, any closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you?
Sure. Pranav, how much equity does a chief orator take? I thought I was one of the only people that thought about that, but it blew my mind that you said it so eloquently. So I agree. But maybe some quick takeaways is that be nimble. COVID-19, very few people expected it. Maybe people said something like that could happen, but the fact that it hit so hard, so you have to be nimble. And so to Henry's point, team is important, but team that is smart and nimble and is not stubborn about what they believe in, and they're open to being wrong. Where can you find me? At Emmanuel Pleitez on Instagram, on Twitter, or just search me up on LinkedIn. Emmanuel Pleitez. Thank you.
Kyle, I'm going to just make one comment. Sorry about that. I know you find me. I forgot to see where people can find me. Sorry about that. I missed that. So people can look me up on LinkedIn. Henry NGA. Thank you.
Awesome. And notice what Emmanuel said. No worries, Henry. He mentioned Instagram. He mentioned other social networks. We've talked about this on previous episodes. Investors are available in different places than just LinkedIn and cold outreach. Leverage these platforms where you are communicating, where you are active, so they can see that and they're open. Okay. Ben, close us out. Closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you?
All right. Well, I'll start with where you can find me. I put up my virtual background so you can see at B Narrison. On Twitter, I open it up for DMs. I take pitches over DM. I'll tie that to the fact that, think about this, if you're going to pitch me by Twitter, which you're welcome to, and I will respond, keep it tight, right? You got to get it enough interest for me to basically say, hey, I want to learn more. It's a lot easier to say not a fit for me than it is to say, hey, I want to learn more. I love the idea of a chief orator. I think this is phenomenal. I will tell you, so I was a freelance writer for about 10 years, and I probably learned more in learning about writing that I can communicate to my entrepreneurs about pitching and decks than anything I've learned as a VC or even as an entrepreneur myself. And I used to believe I gave too much credit to great storytelling. And what I've come to realize is that great storytelling is absolutely required. It is required to raise money. It is required to recruit people. It is required to land customers. It permeates everything. Leaders are storytellers, and leaders are the people we back. I need 5 things to make an investment. People, 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 a great idea, and a huge market if it works. I need uncapped upside. It's the leaders in that team of people that are going to take people forward and break through the unbreakable walls of challenge. Being an entrepreneur is the single hardest job for anybody that doesn't put their life at risk that exists on the planet. And you've got to be able to tell the story to get the people to rise up and follow you, to buy your products and everything else. It is something I used to diminish my own concern for, and I realized that you cannot emphasize it enough. I love the idea of taking acting classes. There's great public speaking classes, but it also has to come from the heart. I mean, it's all just how you get yourself out there for everybody, from sources of capital to sources of clienthood. And I wish you guys all the best, you guys and gals, because it's a phenomenal journey regardless, and there's nothing better than being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with all of you even more. It is absolutely true. And to Gary's point, get shit done. He didn't say it today, but he normally does. And Pranav, you are dropping knowledge. You got today's credit. And also, we talked a little bit about how this is the golden era for India when it comes to content creation. This is the show to watch. If you're an investor looking to make investments and understand what's happening in markets, tune in. If you're entrepreneurs, you've heard some of the best advice that you can get. And you know that investors are out there with direct messages, email inboxes, and everything in between, open, ready to talk. Again, to our entrepreneurs, guys, thank you so much for taking the time and getting up on stage. We do appreciate it. To our investors, thank you again for sharing your advice. To our audience, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Pranav. To our audience, if you like what you heard, thank you, Gary, Emmanuel. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Love to have you as an entrepreneur like we had today pitching to us. Thank you, Andrew. If you're an investor and like to share your thoughts, come on the show. We've got a lot to talk about every single day here on VCTV. And also, thank you, Elena, and to the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible. I am your host, Kyle Ellicott. We're going to take a quick, short break because next up, we've got a whole episode dedicated to the next topic leading out of e-commerce into fintech and blockchain. Get ready, more to come. Again, thank you all very much for joining. Guys, look forward to having you back on future shows. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott, for another edition of VCTV.